The divisional round of the playoffs this past weekend was some of the best football that I have ever seen. From witnessing the Minneapolis Miracle to the Jaguars continuing their incredible run to the AFC Championship game to watching the Titans get embarrassed on national television, it was a great 48 hours for me. I even enjoyed watching the Nick Foles redemption saga unfold in Philadelphia too, considering how improbable that was. But here's the thing, despite all of the interesting narratives that came out of this past weekend and all of the success stories and tales of triumph and disbelief, when I actually sat down and watched the tape from these games, my mind kept going back to two distinct but very related thoughts. One, the Falcons' offense vastly underperformed, and two, Steve Sarkisian has a remarkable gift for pissing me off. You may remember my long-winded and praise-filled episode for Russell Wilson several weeks ago where I broke down his performance against the Eagles' defense as well as the Seahawks' overall game plan and how they exposed Philadelphia's tendencies. 1 week later, the Rams put up 35 points against the Eagles, and the week after that, the injury-riddled and controversy-filled Giants put up 29, and they came extremely close to beating them at the Meadowlands as well. All of those offenses used fairly similar game plans that seemed to build off of one another, and I had thought that maybe there was finally enough tape on this Eagles roster that other teams had figured out how to crack them. And then, the Falcons came to town last week for a much-hyped playoff showdown and seemingly threw all of that out the window. Looking at Steve Sarkisian's game plan against this Eagles defense, I genuinely wonder if he had watched any of those previous games at all. Because if he did, virtually none of those successful concepts were carried over by the Falcons. Remember how the Seahawks were in empty formations for 25% of Russell Wilson's dropbacks and how they abused rub concepts over and over again to break the Eagles' man coverage? Yeah, that didn't happen for Atlanta. Sarkisian dialed up a grand total of 5 plays from empty formations and only 1 rub concept against man coverage. That's it. Even though those 5 plays accounted for 48 passing yards and a ridiculously good 9.6 yards per attempt, they only used it 5 times in 59 total offensive snaps. Oh, and I should mention that the single rub concept they did use went for a 17-yard gain when Mohamed Sanu was sprung wide open. Those rubs are without a doubt the biggest Achilles heel of the Eagles' defense, and yet somehow they were a complete afterthought in the Falcons' game plan. I wish I had an explanation for that, but I don't. It's not even like the Seahawks were the only team to figure this out either. 2 weeks after that Sunday Night Football matchup, the Eagles went up to New Jersey and got torn to pieces by rub concepts from Eli Manning, Sterling Shepard, Roger Lewis, and Tavares King. Odell Beckham and Brandon Marshall were not even in this game, and yet they still gave up 434 passing yards and 4 touchdowns to the Giants of all teams. So for the Falcons, with arguably a better quarterback and a better offensive line and a far superior stable of weapons, what the hell is their excuse? It's not like the Eagles' defense changed. They didn't do anything different on tape from those 2 games. I just don't think Sarkisian prepared nearly enough for any of their well-established tendencies. You can look at this 3rd and 6 from early in the third quarter as a good example of what I think is a complete dud of a play call. Atlanta is in an empty formation in 11 personnel, which admittedly is a good thing, that's what I like to see, but the play design itself makes no sense and leads to an incompletion and a 3 and out to open the second half. Where are the rubs? You've got an opportunity against clear man coverage, which is what the Eagles love to run against empty. It's a big tendency of theirs, and you've got a chance to spring someone loose over the middle off of that rub concept, and you're just running slants and hoping somebody wins. No rubs, no man breakers, there's no anything that can help these receivers get open. It's both unimaginative and completely flies in the face of what every team has successfully put on tape against the Eagles so far this season. Seattle, New York, and LA lived for looks like this because it gave them damn near automatic first downs, and yet for Sarkisian, it was just another 3 and out. And this was not the only exploitable tendency that the Falcons completely ignored. The Giants put on tape multiple times in Week 15 just how vulnerable this Eagles secondary was to double moves. They are a very, very aggressive secondary that will plant and drive on anything near them the second the ball is thrown. That's the biggest reason why they're in the top 4 in interceptions this season. But that aggressiveness is also one of their biggest pitfalls because it can lead to getting roasted by double moves. On the Giants' opening drive, they took advantage of that aggressiveness by first showing Darby a one-step slant with Roger Lewis for a 5-yard gain. Just something to get his mind thinking about the quick passing game and how he needs to drive on these underneath passes as hard as possible. And then just 4 plays later, they built off of that look with a double move. Lewis again shows the one-step slant, Darby drives on it, and then Lewis cuts upfield and gets vertical separation for a 25-yard gain down the boundary. That's what game planning looks like. Roger Lewis is nowhere near as physically talented as Ronald Darby, but he just beat him cleanly on this double move because the Giants coaching staff set him up to do so. That's good game planning. And you know what? Darby would not be the only Eagles corner to get beat by this exact same route that day. Jalen Mills also gave up a touchdown on the sluggo move later in the quarter to Tavares King. Just like Lewis, Tavares King is not even close to comparable to Julio Jones or Mohamed Sanu. So if he could beat Jalen Mills on this move by taking advantage of his over-aggressiveness, why the hell did the Falcons not feature this repeatedly in their game plan as well? You know how many double moves I counted Atlanta running throughout the entire game? 3. And none of them were set up by any previous plays on the call sheet to get Darby or Mills to bite. I'll say it once again, I don't get it. I don't understand how this game plan was constructed. I just had so many problems with the entire offensive philosophy for the Falcons throughout this whole game. It wasn't just the lack of rub routes, and it wasn't just the lack of double moves, and it wasn't just the fact that Tevin Coleman only got 5 carries the entire second half despite being their only effective weapon on the ground. It was also the little things like calling a play where Matt Ryan is lining up under center with a minute 40 to go in the second quarter. It's a 2-minute drill and you've got 1 timeout left. Why is he lined up under center? Everybody in the stadium knows you're not running the ball in that situation, so get in the shotgun, give yourself time to get the ball out against a very potent pass rush, and keep the offense moving. Instead, Ryan got sacked right after he got done taking his drop because Fletcher Cox gave him 0 time in the pocket. That whole defensive line was in full-on hunt mode in an obvious passing situation with the clock winding down. So I'll say it again, why the hell was he under center? It makes no sense. There was another play in the red zone earlier in that quarter that just baffled me as well, but it was really more of a play design issue than a situational awareness issue. It's 12 personnel here in the red zone, and the Falcons motion the tight end Austin Hooper out to a wide split. This motion is essentially an alignment check on the defense. Philadelphia tends to play a lot of zone coverage in the red zone where they really tighten up, and sending Hooper out wide is a way to check for that zone coverage. Darby, a cornerback, follows Hooper out, which is typically a signal for zone coverage, so if the Falcons are going to reasonably assume that the Eagles are playing cover 3 here, which is their go-to coverage in the red zone, here's what that's going to look like. And here is how the Falcons are going to attack it, which is where I really have most of my grievances. From left to right, you've got Hooper running a curl underneath that deep third zone from Darby, Sanu running up the number 1 seam between Darby and the free safety, Rodney McLeod, Tevin Coleman is the check down underneath, and Julio running the nod fade on the other side against Jalen Mills. This was one of those failed double moves that I was talking about that was not set up earlier by any other play calls, so Mills never bid on it because he never had any previous experiences to react to. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. This is my problem with this play design, and it's just a philosophy that I've come to strongly believe in over the years. If you're attacking one seam against a 3-deep zone, you better be attacking the other one too. You cannot just send one receiver up one seam and let everyone else play the boundaries. That's a free safety's dream scenario right there. You have to give that safety a choice. Either he takes the number 1 seam or he takes the number 2 seam. If anything, this play should have Sanu in the number 1 seam and Julio in the number 2 seam running a skinny post or a sluggo seam or something, anything to get him to that spot. You have to freeze Rodney McLeod with a choice, and if you have options in both seams, it makes it a lot easier for Ryan to look off McLeod and open up one of those 2 receivers. And not only that, but the later McLeod is getting to that seam because he's busy making a choice, the less likely it is for one of those receivers to get blown up and possibly injured. Sanu took a gigantic, unnecessary shot because McLeod had free reign to completely tee off on him at the point of the catch. This play design not only cost Sanu a reception and a touchdown, it almost cost him the rest of the game because he could have been seriously injured here. This play isn't just ineffective against this coverage, it's flat out unsafe, and I hate it. I hate that Steve Sarkisian even has this on his call sheet. I really do. I hope he never calls it again, for Sanu's sake, because it is a concussion waiting to happen. Straight up, it is a dangerous play design. Look, I'm not a Falcons fan, I have nothing against them, and I really don't have strong feelings either way if they win or lose. but I hate seeing bad football in the playoffs, especially when that bad football is coming from a team that I know should be way better than they are, and this was bad football. I love this sport as a whole, and to me, it's just very disheartening to see a roster with so much talent underachieve compared to what they're capable of. And that is not an indictment of the Eagles either. Please do not take it that way. They are a fantastic team in their own right, and they played great on defense, but I truly believe that if Atlanta had any semblance of a competent game plan on offense, they would have won this game. Personnel-wise, they are a terrible, horrifically bad matchup for the Eagles. Pound for pound, the Falcons were like a worst-case scenario for what Philly could have faced in the divisional round. But the Eagles' coaching staff, particularly their coordinators, were so much more prepared than the Falcons' coordinators that they still won the game. Out of the whole 2017 season, this matchup was one of the best examples of how much coaching and how much game planning matters. And I really do hope that the Falcons staff learns from their mistakes and fixes whatever's going on in their preparation process that allowed this to happen, because they are too talented to let this happen. Kyle Shanahan dropped 44 points on the Jaguars with Marquise Goodwin as his number one receiver and a quarterback that had been on the roster for barely a month, and you're telling me that Steve Sarkisian can't put up more than 10 on the Eagles with Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, Devontae Freeman, Tevin Coleman, Mohamed Sanu, and Taylor Gabriel? That's just unacceptable by any measure for that level of talent. And I know this whole episode is coming off as an angry rant, and I know I'm not even a Falcons fan, so I really shouldn't be angry, but I am. I hate bad football. I hate it more than anything, and this tape from start to finish was bad football. I don't know if the Vikings are going to make the same mistakes that the Falcons did, but I'll say this, the answers are already out there for them on tape. This Eagles defense has not changed. They're very good, but they haven't done anything different yet. All Minnesota has to do is see what worked for the Seahawks, Rams, and Giants, and copy it. That's it. This is a very evenly matched NFC Championship game between possibly the two most balanced rosters in the conference right now, which means it will all come down to coaching and preparation. If the Eagles could mask or at the very least mitigate their weaknesses that they put repeatedly on tape throughout the season, they could win this game. They have the raw talent to do it, Nick Foles or not. But if the Vikings figure out how to expose those weaknesses like all of those teams did before them, they're going to be hosting their own Super Bowl in a few weeks. I have no doubts about that. So that's where we are with 3 days to go until kickoff. The battle for the NFC comes down to the two best teams in the conference and arguably the two best coaches in the conference. You really can't go wrong picking either one of them to come out on top. So for me, I guess there's only one thing left to say. May the best game plan win. Thank you so much for sitting through possibly my most rant-filled episode of the Film Room ever. I had originally planned on breaking down the Eagles' defensive line and how Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham are absolute monsters, but as I got more and more tape charted from this game, I became angrier and angrier at Steve Sarkisian until I just completely shifted the entire subject and tone of the whole show. But there is a silver lining to all this, and it's that if you believe that the Vikings are going to win the NFC Championship game on the road, but you just couldn't put your finger on why you believed it, maybe this episode helped you out just a little bit. And if you want to make some money off that blind faith, our weekly sponsor, the BetDSI Sportsbook, still has an amazing offer for all Film Room viewers. If you sign up at betdsi.com with promo code FILM25, you get a free $25 in wager credits to use on this weekend's championship games. You can bet any way you want to, on anything you want to, and any cash winnings are 100% yours to keep. You can use your winnings to double down and make some Super Bowl bets, or you can cash out and put it towards buying massive amounts of buffalo wings on the big day. Whatever you want to do is entirely up to you. So, if you want to win some free cash, go to betdsi.com, enter promo code FILM25 when you register, watch the games this weekend, and win some money. As for me, I will be out of town again this weekend for yet another wedding, because nothing says eternal love like going to an outdoor wedding in January, but, you know, the things we do for our friends and family, I guess. I'll probably be in the middle of a 6-hour drive home during the game, so I don't really know if we'll get to watch them live, but I'm sure you can follow my delayed Twitter rants and reactions all night long as I catch up. So keep an eye out for those. I will, of course, be back next week with the first of 2 Super Bowl preview episodes. I'll have one featuring whoever wins the AFC and another featuring whoever wins the NFC, and I'll be making my case for why both of them could be bringing home the Lombardi. So I'll have all of that and more next week. Until then, later.